This has truly been one of the worst seasons in the history of the New York Giants. And I need to quote a writer in this town, because I think there was a writer last night who summed it up beautifully. He's a fellow by the name of Art Stapleton. I don't know Art very well, but Art, I think, captured the New York Giants in this sentence. Uh-huh. 2 sentences. Saquon Barkley wins Offensive Player of the Year. Now let's go kick the Giants in the balls and announce that Hall of Fame snub Eli Manning is not getting in. And he's right. Like, we'll debate the Eli merits, but when you think about how awful this season has been as a totality, Eli Manning in the Eagles Super Bowl that every Giant fan's disgusted with, Eli Manning not getting into the Hall of Fame, it was like the final bleep you to the Giant fan on, I would say, the worst season in the history of the franchise.
Hashtag Giants 100.
Hashtag Giants 100.
I mean, you're right, ultimately. But just as a observer of the Hall of Fame process, it's so flawed and it's so annoying to me now that I know how it works a little bit. And I feel bad for Eli. I know Eli's at peace with this and understands, you know, what went on and why he's not in the Hall of Fame, why they have perhaps one of the smallest classes we'll ever see.
Right.
Only 4 guys in. And we all know why, because they changed the rules and you need 80%. But I get it. But I feel bad for Eli because Eli has the story to be a Hall of Famer. And if a certain percentage is making him wait because he doesn't deserve to be a first ballot Hall of Famer, what the heck are we talking about?
Right.
If you're a Hall of Famer and your opportunity is now, you're a Hall of Famer.
Well, it's funny. I said that about CeCe Sabathia, where I think he's a Hall of Famer if we define it as, is that guy first ballot or should he have to wait a few years? To me, that whole thing is stupid.
Yes.
Either you're a Hall of Famer or you're not a Hall of Famer, because some of the greats of our sports were not first ballot Hall of Famers. Like Joe DiMaggio is not a first ballot Hall of Famer, which to me shows you what does first ballot really mean. So it's funny.
It's really only 3 because 3 got in. It's because Sterling Sharp was a senior committee.
Right.
So, I mean, how are there only 3 guys worthy to be in the Hall of Fame?
No, I get it.
And I know that. I've seen the list. We talk about that list. There are more than 3 guys that deserve to be in the Hall of Fame.
No question.
From the modern era of the NBA.
NFL.
The NFL.
Yes.
It makes no sense at all to me.
The Eli Manning thing to me is very fascinating because the Eli Manning Hall of Fame discussion is not new to WFAN.
No.
Us talking about it today, whether it was in the mornings or the middays or here right now, this isn't new. This debate's been going on since he won his 2nd Super Bowl.
Yes.
On this radio station. And it's a very heated debate, I must tell you. There are a lot of passionate sides to he's not a Hall of Famer, he is a Hall of Famer. I saw last night on social media. I'm not saying it's all Giant fans. I think it's a mix of just NFL fans. When there is something as heated as the Eli Manning debate, I like to simplify it. So I'm going to simplify the Eli Manning Hall of Fame debate where we can all say, okay, that makes sense. Are you ready for this?
Yes, go ahead.
If you take away the postseason, and I know you can't, but just stick with me here. If you take away the postseason and you're just judging Eli Manning as a regular season quarterback, I think most of us would agree he is not a Hall of Famer.
Right.
Is that a fair statement?
Yes, but neither is Terrell Davis.
I agree. I'm only talking about Eli, but yes, you're right.
I'm just saying.
100%.
If you're going to make that caveat, and because the story for so many of these other guys is what did they do in the postseason?
I agree.
And you can't write, I remember this, whatever it was, 12 years ago when TD got in. You can't write the history of the NFL without Terrell Davis. Well, you certainly can't write it without Eli Manning.
I agree.
But that's given what he accomplished and what his teams accomplished.
But that's the crux of the Eli Manning debate. Like, if we can all take a step back and admit, as a regular season quarterback, he's not it. Can you admit that, Sean, by the way?
Yes and no.
What do you mean yes and no? As a regular season quarterback?
Because, look,
Come on, Sean.
This is what I'm talking about yesterday. He retired top 10 in passing yards, touchdowns, is 14th all-time in wins as a quarterback. Now, you want to debate that or other. All I'm saying is, yes, he is not the elitist of elite, but he certainly has a resume with pairs of Super Bowl. It's not Super Bowls and nothing, is my point.
we're going to get to the Super Bowls. I'm not eliminating it. I promise you.
But the point is, it's not just Super Bowls.
Okay,
right?
As a regular season quarterback, his stats, and I know stats lie, they're not perfect, or my eyeball check, because I watched his entire career, we all have, he was not a Hall of Fame quarterback as a regular season quarterback. But to your point about the history of the game and what you do in the postseason, this comes down to how much are you as an individual going to put in what he did on those 2 Super Bowl runs and the story of the NFL to say that's enough to get in. That's what it comes down to. Because as a regular season quarterback, he's not Phillip Rivers. But guess what? Phillip Rivers doesn't have that story teak that you mentioned.
Right.
So this comes down to, and I have this in baseball all the time. Hey, if you take away the postseason, what is he? Well, you have to include it. If you take away the postseason, Eli Manning was a very slightly above average quarterback in the NFL. Mm-hmm. Where did he rank for the entirety of his career? It wasn't number 1, it wasn't number 2, it wasn't number 5. He's probably like the 7th best quarterback in the NFL during his career. But his postseasons, I do not diminish.
You can't diminish
I'm not. The question for every individual who's on the fence in this is, was that enough to take what wasn't a Hall of Fame career and make it a Hall of Fame career? And I think that's a simple way to look at it, because I think it's fair.
Well, what do we play this game for?
To win.
Is it to make money? Is it to get people to go to stadiums and sit their asses in seats and watch a fun product? Is it to win the division? Is it to get to the playoffs? It is all of that, but is it especially to win Super Bowls? And Eli Manning did that with great aplomb twice against what we have grown to be, I don't know, indoctrinated into, against the greatest team in the history of great teams. That's what the Patriots were.
Yes.
And if we're changing the narrative on what the Patriots were, then a lot of people got to apologize for the BS we listened to for 2 decades with Bill Belichick and Tom Brady, right? He beat them twice in the postseason. And I don't, you can't take away that story. Right, and by the way, this is why Eli is okay with this, and I probably am as well, because that story's never leaving.
Right.
The history of the game is never going to take that away from the New York Giants and from Eli Manning and Tom Coughlin, by the way, who we're not even talking about in this conversation, who deserves to be in the Hall of Fame, as we did earlier in the week. But you can't take that away. And so if you're telling the story of this Patriots dynasty, there are a couple of interruptions in it, and 2 of them happen to be Eli Manning, period. That, to me, that makes him a Hall of Famer, especially when you consider all the things that Sean mentioned. It's not like he was sub-average and terrible and a bad guy, and, God, he got lucky. The rest of his team carried him for most of his career. That's not the case. And so, to me, the fact that there are 3 guys that got in, those guys are all worthy. Sterling Shepard gets in.
Sterling Sharp
gets in as a Veterans Committee, senior, whatever it's called, senior committee, I think it is, selection. They got to start letting more guys in the Hall of Fame, because more guys are deserving.
I understand.
And I know they're trying to make it exclusive. You know, there's only so many guys. I forget what the number is in the Hall of Fame, but it's starting to feel unfair, and that frustrates me.
Do you see the other side of the Eli Manning debate?
Of course I do. But
because the other side of it is the regular season stuff. That's the other side.
But who cares about that?
But I think that's where the holdup is. I'm not talking about voters, because I think the whole system is corrupt. That's just my opinion. I'm talking about fans. This is an actual debate that I'm telling you I've heard for many years, and I don't think it's an anti-Giant thing, by the way. I think there are some Giant fans who don't think Eli's a Hall of Famer. I think it's few and far between, though. But I think the debate around Eli Manning has always been about how much can the postseason brilliance, and it was brilliant. It
Single
was.
postseason
I'm
passing yardage leader.
You don't have to sell me on it.
Well,
I appreciate it, but how much does that offset the fact that his regular seasons were not Hall of Fame worthy?
I just need to.
That's the debate.
I just need to reiterate this, and I understand what you're saying, and I'm not going fully the other way. I think we are we've almost in this whole debate, and it's not just us on the show leading up, we've got to the point where I think we've completely undervalued Eli Manning's regular seasons. I mean, the fact that he was that durable, went out there and played every game and had that streak. Oh, by the way, you think that's not going to be used in a pro Phillip Rivers debate if and when he gets in the Hall of Fame too? And one step further, and yes, he's not going to say it, but I'll say it as a Giant fan grew up watching, outside of Tiki Barber, who it's a disgrace is not in the Hall of Fame, give me the other Hall of Fame offensive player Eli Manning played with.
Here's the problem.
I just saw a second one Rivers went in.
Here's what I'll counter, and I'll include you in this, Tiki, and it's a compliment. There were years in which you were maybe the best or second best or third best running back in the sport, okay? There were years where Peyton Manning was the best quarterback in the NFL.
All of those guys in his era,
hold on.
all of them had Hall of Famers with them.
There was never a year
Yeah.
in which Eli Manning was top 6 as a quarterback in the NFL. And I know you hear me and you think I'm hating. I think Eli's a Hall of Famer because of a lot of things you said, Teak, about what he did in the postseason. But his regular seasons were not Hall of Fame worthy. Even Terrell Davis, you brought him up earlier, Teak, he was the best running back in the NFL for a couple of years.
Yeah, he was. Absolutely.
So that was never the case with Eli Manning. That was the case with you. That was the case with Terrell. That was the case with a lot of other people. And that's what holds Manning back.
Yeah, but to me...
Am I wrong?
I keep hearing the stories. Like, everybody has the story. It's the story. It's the story. Look, this goes back to the T.O. thing. Right? They created, and this is the same, mostly the same voters, they created the most nonsensical story about Terrell Owens, that for why he shouldn't have been a Hall of Famer. And I couldn't believe it when I was hearing it. As a guy who played the sport, the reason that they didn't let Terrell Owens in until his third time, I believe, maybe it was fourth, I can't remember, in the Hall of Fame, was because every team he was on, nobody wanted him. And Bill Parcells called him that guy or that player, whatever the heck it was.
Right.
But you can't deny the greatness of T.O.
Can't.
Just like you can't deny the unprecedented accomplishment that Eli Manning did twice to one of the best teams in the history of the game. And so, look, I can't argue against these guys because we don't get a chance to. Right? They don't answer for themselves. But I feel like the fact that this is, I don't know. I can't even put it into words, but it doesn't make sense to me how 3 guys get in the Hall of Fame and Eli's left out. And not even in the finals of the finals, by the way. Which, who the hell knew that there was a finals of the finals?
Right.
But it's just I don't know. From a friend of Eli, a teammate of Eli's, is frustrating.
Yeah, as a fan, I'm only frustrated by I won't vote for you this time.
Yes.
But I'll vote for you next time. That, to me, is stupid.
I agree.
That does not make sense to me.
What's interesting? I feel like in baseball, they've gotten over that.
I don't think they have, because there was a guy who didn't vote for Ichiro. There was only one guy.
That's just an idiot.
That's right.
Right. Who's remaining anonymous and will not tell us why he didn't do that.
Right.
Which we obviously know why, because there's only one that can be unanimous. But whatever, who cares? CC is a Hall of Famer.
Right.
Is he 89%? Was that what it was? 80? What? It was 80-something percent.
Right. That's the crazy part to me. Like
baseball got over it.
Right.
CC is a Hall of Famer. We don't have to make him wait because he wasn't elite of the elite of the elite of the elite.
Like, right? If you were,
he was great, and he's a Hall of Famer. Let him in on his first ballot.
If you're a borderline Hall of Famer, and I see the back and forth on Eli Manning, I even saw the back and forth a little bit on CC Sabathia. My attitude is, if I think you're a Hall of Famer, I'd vote for you. Well, I'm not going to wait.
Well, I think what's happened in baseball that's not necessarily happening in football yet, as it pertains to the Hall of Fame, is that there is a newer, more nuanced, more evolved interpretation of what the Hall of Fame is. And you see it in baseball, right? Did CC hit the milestones of milestones? No. But the game changed. Right? The game changed.
No question.
Around him.
Yes.
Right? When he started, it was one way. When he finished, it was a very different way. And so in that context, you look at him and say, dude, he's a Hall of Famer. He doesn't need to wait. Put him in the Hall of Fame.
Just because he's not Pedro Martinez, and he's not, doesn't mean he has to wait.
Exactly.
Like, because that to me is stupid. I think the Eli thing to me is, I see why he's borderline. Like, I don't think this was a no-brainer. Now, I think he's a Hall of Famer. You think he's a Hall of Famer, but I see the other side, and I think it's summed up by he was not a great regular season quarterback.
Yeah, but
my counter and your counter is, hey, guess what? The Super Bowls and the playoffs supersede that.
But it matters who he played with. It matters what those teams were like. It matters who his teammates were. It's not as if Eli was terrible.
I told he was not.
Some of those teams were just bad, and that's not his fault. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But you play with what you play with. But when you get your opportunity, you maximize it, and Eli did that. That's the argument for him. There are many arguments against him, obviously.
I think the argument against him is just simply the numbers. Like, that's it. It's just, as a regular season quarterback, he was good, not great. That's the argument against him. Now, I'm a big playoff guy. It's the same reason why I think Kurt Schilling's a Hall of Famer. I think his playoffs make him go over the top. He's a 2-time Super Bowl MVP. I don't need to repeat it to this audience. Yep. You know full well who the hell he is. And to me, that's what takes him over the top, despite being what I've described him as a regular season quarterback.
There's not a lot of those, by the way.
No, a 2-time a Super Bowl MVP?
Yes.
It's a short list, and the guys on that list are legends. Absolutely. We'll get to your calls about this, 888-808-1019. It was just another example that this 24-25 season has been a horrible one for the New York Giants. And if you missed it, another shot was taken at the Giants last night at their NFL Honors event. We'll have you take a listen to that, plus your reaction to Eli Manning, ballot, year number 1, not being a Pro Football Hall of Famer. We got a lot of Super Bowl stuff to get to as well, including our favorite props that we will give advice on. Not really advice, just our opinion on. Because really, when you make a bet, do whatever the hell you want to do. The odds are you're probably going to lose.